There are people in American public life who arrive like a slow burn, a name you hear more and more until suddenly everyone seems to know it. Charlie Kirk was one of those figures. He began as a teenager with a folder of ideas, and in a little over a decade turned that folder into a national movement. By the time the headlines turned tragic in September of 2025, Kirk had become both a household name in conservative circles and a lightning rod for critics. Loved by some, loathed by others, and impossible for anyone to ignore. This is the story of how an 18-year-old from suburban Chicago built a youth movement, the controversies that followed, and the complicated legacy he left behind. It's not just a biography, it's a look at how ambition, media, and politics collided in one very modern American life. Charlie Kirk was born in Arlington Heights, Illinois, on October 14, 1993. Think of a kid who loved debate and history, who read politics the way some kids read sports scores. In his late teens, he was deeply influenced by conservative thinkers and activists, and he began showing up to local events, hungry to be part of something bigger than himself. Those early moments mattered. They shaped how he spoke, how he debated, and how he saw power as something to be seized, not politely requested. A tipping point came in 2012. Fresh out of high school, Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA with an older Tea Party activist who helped him file the paperwork. What started as a campus outreach project quickly became a national operation aimed at organizing conservative students, challenging liberal professors, and creating a visible presence on campuses across the country. The image that Kirk cultivated was simple and direct. Young, unapologetic conservatives pushing back hard against what they called an entrenched liberal consensus in higher education. Part of Kirk's success was voice. He knew how to speak like a spotlight. Confident one-liners, provocative challenges, and a clear us versus them framing that made gatherings feel urgent. He built a brand around events, speech circuits, and social media, not just a nonprofit. TPUSA became less like a campus club and more like a movement machine. Chapters, merch, viral videos, and a pipeline of youthful ambassadors ready to perform political combat on social feeds and lecture halls. Here's an interesting detail often overlooked. TPUSA combined classical organizing with modern spectacle. They used social media stunts, public call-outs, and watch lists to name and shame professors or school boards. Those tactics were polarizing, but they were also wildly effective at generating attention and recruiting. Attention became the currency, and Kirk spent it lavishly. The expansion didn't happen by accident. Major donors, people with money and political ambitions, noticed the energy TPUSA was producing. Funding poured in, and that allowed the organization to professionalize national staff, training programs, and high-production events. For a young leader who once joked he had no money, no connections, and no idea, it was a fast transformation into something very powerful. You can hear the awe in the voices of people who worked with him. They saw a kid turn into a CEO almost overnight. Kirk didn't stay on campus. He moved into national conservative media, filling airwaves and podcasts with commentary. His presence on conservative cable, radio, and later his own show turned him into a recognizable figure to voters and activists beyond college campuses. This media pivot changed the scale of his influence. He wasn't only organizing students, he was shaping narratives for millions. People who met him described two things in the same breath: charisma and tactical coldness. He could light up a room and also operate like a strategist, always thinking a few moves ahead. That combination helped him close deals and secure platforms, but it also attracted critics who saw a tendency towards spectacle over substance. Kirk's career is marked as much by controversies as by accomplishments. TPUSA's methods, public call-outs, watch lists, and provocative campus events drew accusations of intimidation and misinformation from opponents. Journalists and watchdogs criticized the organization for targeting professors and for some of the rhetoric associated with its campaigns. These controversies followed Kirk as he moved into national prominence, and they have remained a persistent part of how he was viewed in the public square. One of the most discussed initiatives was a professor watch list, An online list of professors accused by TPUSA of promoting political views in class. To supporters, it was accountability. To critics, it was a tool for harassment. Either way, it exemplified the trade-offs of Kirk's approach. Effective attention-getting, but with real consequences for people targeted in the campaign. Kirk's rise coincided with the ascent of a particular conservative movement in American politics. He forged relationships with prominent figures, aligned closely with parts of the Trump orbit, and positioned TPUSA as a youth arm of a broader political project. During the 2024 election cycle, and in the years around it, his organization and media presence were frequently mentioned as having contributed to conservative turnout and messaging. Whether you see that as a success or a threat depends on your politics, but you can't deny the tangible influence he built. Behind the headlines, Kirk was also a father and a husband. Reports note a family life that he tried to protect from the glare of public spectacle. For someone who built a persona of constant presence, that desire for ordinary private moments, walks, dinners, family time, is a reminder that public figures are also people, with real relationships that are affected by the life they choose. Kirk's talent, or tactic, depending on who you ask, was making conservative ideas feel modern, urgent, and culturally relevant to younger audiences. He framed policy debates as identity battles: culture, free speech, patriotism. That framing resonated with many young conservatives who felt alienated by mainstream campus culture. He offered them community, clear talking points, and the sense that taking sides was not only permitted, but noble. TPUSA sold more than ideas. It sold identity. Branded apparel, campus events, viral hashtag campaigns, those were not incidental. They were part of a sustained brand effort to turn political views into a lifestyle. It's a modern political marketing lesson. Movements that feel personal convert better into action. As his platform grew, so did scrutiny. Fact-checking organizations and reporters called out instances where claims associated with him or his organization were misleading or lacked context. Opponents accused TPUSA of amplifying conspiratorial narratives at times. Supporters argued that mainstream media treated conservative youth activism unfairly. The lines between critique, bias, and accountability blurred, and that ambiguity became part of the broader debate about information in the digital age. If you step back, it's easy to see why Kirk mattered. He combined entrepreneurship, marketing savvy, and political ambition. He had a knack for stoking controversy that translated into donations, attention, and rapid organizational growth. For a movement that wanted youthful energy and a national footprint, he provided both. In the 2024 campaign cycle, Kirk's voice was prominent among conservative audiences. Many observers linked parts of Republican messaging and youth outreach to TPUSA's playbook. The organization's reach into high schools and colleges meant that the movement's messages were layered: grassroots activism at the local level, amplified by national media and donor networks. Whether you saw that as the healthy spread of civic debate or as a coordinated effort to reshape institutions depends on your vantage point. Consider the sheer speed, from an 18-year-old starting a group in 2012 to a national figure in just a few years. That speed created both loyalty and skepticism. People who rose with him became fiercely loyal. People who watched from the outside often wondered whether the movement's structure and funding created pressures to escalate rhetoric and spectacle. That tension is part of Kirk's story, and part of the larger story about how politics now moves in fast, viral cycles. In September 2025, Charlie Kirk was fatally shot at an event at a Utah college. The news shocked the political world and prompted immediate questions and investigations. Authorities worked to piece together motive, and public figures from across the political spectrum reacted with grief, outrage, and calls for calm. In the hours and days that followed, misinformation and AI-generated claims spread rapidly across social platforms, complicating the picture and prompting officials to urge caution. The tragedy quickly became a case study in how events play out online. Unverified claims, manipulated images, and partisan spin circulated as fast as the official updates. Officials warned that foreign and domestic bad actors could exploit the chaos. For a man whose life was connected to media spectacle, it was a cruel, immediate mirror, an event that would be filtered into narratives and used to rally baselines across a divided information ecosystem. Reactions were stark and immediate. Allies framed him as a martyr to free speech and youth activism. Critics, even when condemning violence, reflected on the rhetorical environment that had fueled political polarization. Some called for de-escalation, others warned that the event would be weaponized for political advantage. In moments like this, public grief mixes with political calculation, and that combination can be as revealing as it is ugly. So what does Charlie Kirk leave behind? That depends on who you ask. For supporters, he built an organization that energized young conservatives, taught messaging, and created a pipeline to national politics. For critics, he left behind a movement that at times stoked division and blurred lines between activism and harassment. More neutrally, he leaves behind an instruction manual of modern political branding, how to turn outrage into attention and attention into infrastructure. A few human details often get lost in headlines. He once told interviewers he felt a mission to speak for young people who felt sidelined. He could be genial and charming in private conversations, according to some colleagues. And despite the public bravado, friends noted that he treated staff with a disciplinarian intensity, the kind of leader who expected hustle and rewarded loyalty. Those contradictions, warmth and drive, showmanship and strategy, made him complicated to know and harder to simplify. If you're a creator, organizer, or simply someone watching American politics, there are lessons in Kirk's arc. First, clarity of message matters. Second, branding and spectacle can amplify ideas quickly. Third, growth often requires funding and strategic alliances. And finally, influence comes with responsibility. When you build a machine that can shape young minds, the impact is long-lasting, for better or worse. Kirk's story forces a hard question. How do we balance accountability and free speech? Activists who push hard can expose hypocrisy and bring new voices into debate, but the same tactics can chill conversation and create fear. The answer lies not in silencing either side, but in building institutions that can withstand heat without burning. Imagine a college campus in the early 2000s. A kid shows up with a flyer, a belief, and a stubbornness that won't quit. Over the next decade, that kid would become a national leader, a polarizing figure, and ultimately the center of a tragic headline. That trajectory, from backyard organizer to national figure, is quintessentially modern. It's a reminder of how fast influence can travel, how personal ambition can become public consequence, and how a life lived in the spotlight leaves messy legacies. Charlie Kirk's life is a story about modern politics, about ambition, media, and the friction between activism and accountability. He built something real, a movement with chapters, donors, and real influence. He also left behind questions about tactics and tone, and about the fragile boundaries in our shared civic life. Whether you admired him or opposed him, his impact forces us to reckon with how movements are made in the digital age. As we close, ask yourself, what kind of political life do we want to encourage in young people? Do we prize spectacle or substance? Do we reward the loudest voice or the most thoughtful one? Charlie Kirk's story doesn't answer those questions for us, but it asks them, and that's the start of a conversation worth having. Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more deep dives like this, where we look under the surface of figures who shaped our moment and try to understand not just what they did, but why it mattered.